So let's start focusing on this change we are speaking. One thing that emerged recently is probably that if you don't change the social and economic model, we have consequences both for poor and rich country. That was something that probably someone couldn't believe before. Now we suppose that almost everyone has accepted that we must change. Then the main issue is how much it will cost, how much it will cost not changing, and how to govern the change. So which are the key points of this new model? I mean, one is the energetic. We must change the energetic model. Which are the other paradigms that we must change?
Right. Well, these are impossible questions to answer. I wouldn't even, but I mean, we are having a conversation, not a question-answer session. So let me react to it in the following way. The bulk of the economics profession is a liberal one. And liberal, I mean the following. I don't mean free market or anything. I mean liberal in the following sense. On the whole, we are skeptical as a profession of manipulating the human psyche. So the way we write our papers, the way we think about economic problems, we say, well, if things are going wrong, then change the incentive structure. So we don't question human motivation. We try and talk about ways to change the choices people have so that they end up choosing things which are more for the social good. But we're not trying to change people or their attitudes or it's just that, you raise a tax. So something becomes much more pricey, so people stop buying it. You don't say, look, don't want that thing. You see what I mean, okay? So that's a very pervasive view we have, I think partly because we come out of the Enlightenment, I suppose our subject grew out of the Enlightenment, so we are naturally skeptical of manipulating human motivation. Then, of course, in the 20th century, the experience that we have of changing human motivation is really bad news. Soviet Union, Hitler's Germany, Mao Zedong's China.
Motivation can change.
And so it's sort of, keep that up.
But it's better that it does.
So we tend to look for public policies which will change the constraints that people face, firms face, individuals face, households face, which will move the economy in the right direction. So over climate change, for example, we are constantly thinking in terms of taxes, quotas. Okay? That's the idea. But now, we are having a conversation. I can't prove this as a theorem. There's no way I can do that. But there is a tradition which I think we economists have not taken seriously enough. A tradition of molding preferences which comes not through politics, but through communities and the church, for example. It's easy to make fun of the church. I mean, secular people are all constantly making fun. But if I think about the Christian church's behavior over this century, particularly in third world countries, it's pretty impressive. In Latin America, the church has been the sort of most forward-looking, progressive entity you can imagine in the face of third-rate dictators, right? I mean, through 50s and 60s, it was the priests who were getting shot because they were creating agitation or something like that. And then, of course, there are the teachers in schools and the household. So in some sense, I believe that in addition to the incentive structure, the taxes, subsidies, and so forth, something like a moral conviction of what is correct behavior is needed. Now, we feel, at least we economists are quite happy for us to we are comfortable with the idea that people are taught in school that they shouldn't steal, that they shouldn't tell a lie, and so forth. That doesn't require God. It can come out of any moral. But we are uncomfortable about, or we don't take seriously the idea that people from early childhood could say, well, no, we are not going to do this because that's polluting. or that uses up too much. We're very uncomfortable with that. As a profession, I mean.
Yeah.
And we must be uncomfortable because we don't write about it.
No, yeah, yeah.
But I'm becoming more and more convinced that has to be done, or that needs to be done. And the reason is the following, quite apart from anything else. Our models of incentives, structure of incentive, that you choose taxes, public policies to alter the incentive structure. The weakness of that model is that there's always a lot of leakage. Leakage in the sense of opportunistic behavior within it.
Okay.
You can't monitor everything that's going on from outside. If you start doing that, you become a totalitarian state,
Yeah.
and then you have other kinds of problems.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if you want to have a liberal society like here, we have also privacy laws, the things the state or the community cannot encroach. So the discipline needs to come not only from the external side, but from internally. And we are missing that out. At least we as a profession don't talk about it.
Okay.
Now, maybe we don't talk about it because we have nothing to say. Maybe. But it's something I think I feel we should now join forces with.
So it's a cultural problem as
I
first
think
thing.
so.
But for example, by a material point of view, is it possible, for example, to change the energetic model without to fight against poverty? I know you work on environmental economy, but also on poverty and nutrition. Is it possible to look at those aspects of the world as separated?
Well, look, at the research level at the individual research level, typically we'll have to separate them because you have to take pieces. Now, it's a limitation of the human mind and so forth, and tractability of a problem. If you want to do serious research, there is nothing you can do. You have to cut corners and shape it in a way. And the art of good research, like in the sciences, like was in here, is to be able to shape it in such a way that it does illuminate, at the end of the day. But of course, you're quite right. Some of these problems are extremely interrelated. In my own work, I found that it's really quite nice that you've asked me this question, because I spent a great deal of my middle years, last 20 years, let's say, in some sense being isolated from the body of development economists because they didn't take the environment seriously, thinking that's a luxury. And from environmental economists in the US because they saw the environment in terms of cleaning up a river or a lake, an amenity or a beach, rather than as a factor of production in households in Africa. So I had to bring the two together because I couldn't otherwise understand it. But in the process of doing that, I got isolated from both.
Yeah.
So that's been a bit of a nuisance, actually. I felt pretty unhappy. I mean, one can live. So you're right. Many of these problems are not just interrelated because everything is interrelated.
Yeah.
But as a scientist, you know that there are first order, second order, third order approximations, and sometimes many of these interrelationships can be ignored. But in some key problem areas of rural poverty, for example, you just cannot, you must not ignore the environment. But yet, development economists have done that for 40 years, and with no problem. I keep on writing, and they say, how nice, but then they go away and go